Alright, I have just finished Nemesis Games, Book 5 of The Expanse by James Corey, and it was as good as the others. There wasn't a lot of action on the Rocinante. The ship was like being worked on for like a couple of months or something, which is where the story takes place. If you've seen the TV show, this is the part in the story where Marco Inaros and the Free Navy Belters from the OPA faction that splits off. I think they're working for Anderson Dawes, but doesn't really say specifically. He launches an attack on Earth. He starts dropping these tungsten asteroids or like slugs or whatever, kinetic energy weapons that they speed up, and they hit like 3 or 4 different places on Earth. And it's pretty much 4 different stories where, you know, your main crew, James Holden, stays on Tycho with Fred Johnson, and then Amos wants to go to Earth because he wants to visit somebody that had died that he knew, Lydia, and it kind of goes into his background a little bit. And he also visits this gangster guy, and then he goes to visit Clarissa Mao, who's in this super high-max prison that's underground in this place called the Pit. And this is where he starts calling her Peaches, too, if you've seen the show. And he ends up, like, being there when that kinetic energy weapon hits. So they kind of escape the prison, and nobody really cares anymore because Earth is kind of in a post-apocalyptic kind of a setting. And that whole story with Amos is kind of like post-apocalyptic story, you know, like Walking Dead or The Road by Cormac McCarthy, one of those kind of situations. It's like they're riding bicycles and they're trying to get to Baltimore, where she knows where these rich people have this island and they have a ship that they can escape back to Mars, or Luna, which is the moon. So they have to get that gangster guy to help them, and then they get attacked by the security force. That's pretty dope. And so that's one story. And then you've got the story where Alex, the pilot, he goes to visit his ex-wife. Doesn't really accomplish anything at all. He goes to Mars. While he's there, he meets up with Bobby Draper. They have some drinks, and then the Martian Navy wants him to look at, or Holden wants him to look at a ship. I can't remember what happened first. They were with the Martian Navy when Marco Inaros attacked. So they were trying to escape it. There's this whole bunch of stuff happens where they use the what's it called? The Razorback. I think Bobby had gotten it from the last book or 2 or something. So they were flying it, and they ended up taking like the Martian Secretary General. They were flying away from this battle going on. They were being chased constantly. So they had them like shooting missiles with them. So they were flying with like a hive of like missiles that they could target lock and shoot back at people that were chasing them if they had to, trying to like basically escape to Luna or Earth or whatever. Or I guess they were going to Mars. They were like out in the middle of this weird asteroid belt where they found all these like stolen ships that the Martian or the Free Navy had stolen, and I thought they had taken them from like this weird activity at the ring gates, because some of the ships that were going through, there was this weird kind of red distortion that they thought that's how they were stealing them. But it's kind of didn't really explain it. I think those were just like being eaten by the ring gates, and there's like this hidden entity, probably the aliens that are more powerful than the crazy aliens that made the ring gates, the ones that we're supposed to be really super scared of, because at the very end they kind of explained that they were doing something with that. So I don't know how they got all these Martian ships, or if they turned some Martians against Mars, but the Free Navy has all these Martian ships. Actually, it started out with what's her name, Naomi's son Philip. He is like helping. He's on a mission for Marco where he's stealing this stealth paint, and nobody even knew what his mission was, but they blew up a bunch of stuff and they didn't know what was stolen. So he stole a bunch of stealth paint, I guess, to put on the asteroids that they're dropping, or Martian Navy ships or something. So then Naomi gets a message from Marco, and she goes on her own little mission, and she ends up like kind of working for him, and she like buys this old civilian ship that they're going to use for a bomb. I think they're trying to, like, she wrote this software years and years ago that when you put it on any kind of a ship, and it would cause the magnetic bottle in the nuclear fusion drive to explode in different situations. You could program it, like if a ship comes in close contact, or you get up to a certain percentage of your thrusters being used, or any kind of thing like that, you could set it up to explode. Seemed like, you know, like it didn't make sense that it would be that easy to do that, but whatever. So so then she becomes like a kind of working with him a little bit, but then she turns on him, and then they put her in a holding cell, and she keeps figuring out like engineering ways to like sneak out and break out, and she eventually does. But then she realizes if she gets a chance to jump to her old ship, she was going to give the ship to her son, but he's like an asshole because his dad raised him and stuff. She can't really turn him to her side. So then she's like, she can't take an EVA suit because they would still come after her, so she has to make it look like she died. So she spaces herself. This is the episode in the TV show where she jumps out an airlock with no suit, and she goes ship to ship for like 15 seconds in vacuum, which is possible, I guess. They say all the physics in this show are super realistic. But, yeah, then she has to, like, jump out again because Alex comes to save her, and she has to do all these, like, belter signals. So the whole time, James Holden can't really do anything. He's back on Tycho, and he finally gets his ship fixed, and they actually put that code in the Rocinante to blow it up, so she has to, like, send a secret message to him. Or, it's not a secret message, but anyway. They stop that, and then he gets this other crew with Fred Johnson, and they go and like all meet up. So it's like 4 separate stories, and then they all kind of come together at the end. And I think Bobby is going to be joining the crew permanently. They did actually mention Drummer in this one, so this is the first time Drummer really gets mentioned. Didn't really do that much, but maybe in the next book she will. There was like a lot of Belter language, which is kind of a polyglot language that the Belters use, which is English, German, Portuguese, and a few other languages all kind of mixed together. Pretty interesting way. It's like, instead of creating a whole new fantasy language, you just like mix up a bunch of languages that already exist. And then you get the whole thing where Amos brings Peaches with him, and he like smuggles her onto the Rocinante, and he's trying to talk Holden into like letting her join the crew as his apprentice, but Holden's like, he's the one she's trying to kill. Like, she was like doing some really fucked up murdery shit in the previous book, where she had a guy like, somebody who was a friend of hers, she killed him and put him in a suitcase and was carrying him around. It's like really fucked up shit. Plus she's got these implants that makes her like super fast if she wants to, and she's like dangerous. But they were talking about in the beginning how Amos is kind of like a monster, and like he uses James Holden as his surrogate consciousness because he doesn't have one of his own, and like that's why he's easy to become friends with somebody else as a monster like that. It's kind of like he had a situation where he was going to save these civilians, and they asked why he would do it. He says, well, that's just what James would do. He doesn't make decisions for himself. Just like he just latches on to somebody that has a consciousness and like follows them around. That's his thing. It's pretty cool as a character thing. But now, I was planning on reading Stormlight Archive 4, which is Rhythm of War. Looked on the library website this morning, and it has been checked out. So can't do that next. So we're gonna go with the original plan, Joe Abercrombie month. I'm gonna start on the Blade itself. Probably November and December. I'm just gonna try to get through the first 6, maybe of these first law books, and then how many weeks is that? If I get where I need a break, I'll put another Expanse book in between as a buffer. I'll go from sci-fi fantasy. And now maybe I'll get Rhythm of War in there at some point, but it's like another 1,232 page. It's almost exactly the same number of pages as the last book. It's weird how they did that. And I was reading a synopsis for it, and it seems like a lot is pretty much exactly the same kind of continuation of what was going on Oathbringer. But yeah, could do Lies of Locke Lamora, but my plan was to do Abercrombie, so I'm going to do Abercrombie. I'm going to get into it. Really looking forward to reading Malice as well next year. Maybe getting into this Tad Williams trilogy and the Kings of the Wild. Maybe Name of the Wind. Next year's going to be interesting. I'm going to try to collect all of the Robin Hobb books that are in the British format. I've got 2 of them, and the American ones, but yeah, I think she's making like a new trilogy too. They just announced. There's some other stuff that they've announced that's going to be coming out next year. Alrighty.